This is called Neak Poan. Just read this quickly. It's the Neak Poan, or the Entwined Naga, an artificial island measuring 350 meters on either side, built in the middle of a reservoir which is also man-made. It comes from the motif of serpents encircling the base of the central sanctuary. All inscriptions note that it is a sacred island, drawing its charm from its ponds and clearing away the sins of those who approach it. Hey, it's got some work to do. The ponds in question, number 4, they were fed by a complex system of anthropomorphic and zoomorphic fountains. The mysterious curative function of its waters was all the more so, given the myth of the deliverance of a group of shipwrecked sailors by the horse Bala. A form of Loskvara is represented here. So this is kind of novel. Looks like we've got one pond here and one at each of the 4 quadrants, and then a central pond, and in the midst of that is this monument. Now it's interesting to imagine if these were filled with water, or at least had water in them. And this is like a passageway, I would suspect, from this pond into the main pond. Did they have boats that one could actually pass that way, literally, or was it just a figurative? Here we see the 2 Nagas on either side of that stairway, and the Nagas appear to wrap around, and at the other side, perhaps they entwine. We'll see that better when we walk around there. This also appears certainly to be an animal, whether it's a lion or what, I can't tell for sure. It's paying homage to the monument itself, and perhaps inside the monument was a Buddha or a linga. Again, it's hard to tell whether the animal is a horse or what, but there's an opening there, and my guess is that inside that we would find today a Buddha. Notice here a linga simulation, but I wonder what the little depression is in that rock in front of it. Was it for an offering or something? And I think the interpretive sign said there were fountains that fed these waters, these ponds. And notice that those ponds, the one on either side there, which would be the south and the north, don't have a passway through. What did that symbolize, I wonder? Yeah, just notice that neither of these 4 little templates, if you will, actually pass from the sub-pond into the major pond. So therefore we have to assume that each of these little structures was in itself a little worship area where a linga or later the Buddha would be in. And now there's something in there now. Notice the absence of a Buddha, so I don't know what this is about. Okay, so this is a Buddha. Its mouth, notice, probably was the vehicle by which the water poured out of the main pond by gravity into these ponds. And perhaps the water exited out through the bottom there to keep the level constant here. Because from here you can see that probably right about where those stones are would have been the water level. Now, did people have access? You would think they did. I want to try and decipher this beast a little bit. It looks like there are men at the back kneeling down holding it up or something up. And maybe there are men the rest of the way holding something up. There, a close-up of the detail of these minor temples. Is that a linga monument there in the center? That square one, perhaps? Okay, and here are the Nagas' entwined tails, from which this monument gets its name. It'd be interesting to know if this Nagas, or if these Nagas, were highly decorated like the Nagas that you see on temples in Thailand. Now I'm just trying to see if I can figure out where the water drains through or from. I would guess it would be there, but I can't tell even looking at the video if there's an opening there that allows water to flow from there into that pond behind it. Either that or there's something hidden beneath, or maybe that's the hole right there. So this is the Honda bike from Japan, of course, that powers everything. And then they have this metal structure, and you can see where it apparently goes in there and somehow attaches to the framing of the bike itself, I'm sure, in order to make it solid. And then it attaches with this, and I think this is also spring loaded. There's some shocks there, some kind of shocking, not much. And then this locks it. So one of these is brand new, is $100. And it has, here it has front, well actually it has these blinds that come down all around the side. I'm not sure, in the monsoon season, yeah, they would use that. And then this is where he can store tools and anything else that he wants. Yeah, it's locked compartments. $500. Okay, so the bike is about $1,500. So for around $1,600, you can have a business that you can make money. Now, the ideal for a tuk-tuk driver is that you have a client that comes into town and hires you for the day to run you around to wherever he wants to go, or she wants to go, or they want to go. So when you're going to a series of temples, that means you'll spend a fair amount of time just sitting around sleeping. And this fellow's put a hammock in here, which is a pretty clever idea. Okay, this is where the water flows out of West Baray, which was the largest reservoir created by the ruler at the time of Angkor Wat, when this region was at its political, economic, and religious. We saw on the tuk-tuk driver, and my friend from Japan, whose tuk-tuk I horned in on. We're going to split one of these planches, I think they call them, of chicken. So this is frogs here. And so apparently, is this maybe the body part? That looks like some little chicken. And of course fish. And she's waiting for our chicken, including legs, to be. So we're going to have a little picnic down near the water's edge. And we're sitting on these platforms here, which have hammocks that he can sleep in a few minutes. And here, Bisan is getting dinner, lunch ready, or whatever. Huh? Ah, okay. Cool. And here's our rice, and there's our chicken. And I did find some soda water. She'll just roam up apparently on Sunday, which is tomorrow. This place is absolutely jam-packed as far down as this whole thing goes, whatever distance that is. And this little walkway gets you up to the platform where they've laid out all these nice mats to lie on. All works, still concessions embedded in the water. A big stairway up there to go up, or I can go up this one, which I came down earlier, so if I can come down this one, I can certainly go up. Remember, this was built by hand. And it is by itself probably the prime reason for the power of the king who built Angkor Wat, because this reservoir fed a vast irrigation system that was able to feed for some time almost 1 million people. Now, it's not the only reservoir. There were others, but not as large. Of course, the dam I'm standing on and the spillway are relatively recent, as one might imagine from looking at it. But this is the prime water source for Siem Reap. So all along here are the shops that provide the takeaway food and cold drinks that you can either eat back inside there or take down to the lake if you can be fortunate enough to find a spot. And then of course a ton of shops over here that are trying to sell souvenirs to tourists. Remember, these are not just European tourists. In fact, I don't see any. I haven't seen any since I've been here. I mean, out here. These will be Thai tourists, Japanese tourists, tourists from the surrounding countries. The only thing novel about what's here would be the price. If you can bargain it lower, then you can find the same stuff anywhere else. Clothing is inordinately beautiful in these countries. For what reason, I'm not sure, except that labor is relatively inexpensive for producing the fabric as well as for fashioning it into garments. This is apparently the dump. That is if you discount the whole area. It's very, very hot out, but if you stay in the shade, you can reduce that impact. It's a dry heat, which is some slight consolation over Bangkok, which really tears you down. I plan never to have to go back to that city. I assume this dirt road wraps the entire reservoir, and that perhaps there are even communities that live around it somewhere, informal communities probably. Off to my left, music's playing. Don't know if someone has a residence there or not. We'll have to try and look up the geology of this area, because it's a fine sand that the road devolves into. And of course, sandstone is the primary building material for these temples. But what caused this? Was it once I see, there's some boys, 3 on a cycle, have picked up a branch and are going after the girls to scare the hell out of them with the branch, but they'll kick up enough dust those guys won't even be able to see where they're going. Here's a little dragonfly giving me an excuse to stop for a while in the shade. I'm just taking this hike while my tuk-tuk driver is sleeping, and while his guest, who I'm leeching off at a price, the use of the tuk-tuk, is also sleeping. That's one of his goals on this trip, was to eat the barbecue chicken and then sleep in the tuk-tuk. I mean, sleep in the hammock for a while. You can see that the water level gets up here. In fact, it gets up here strongly enough that it's undercutting this bank, causing that sand bank just to slough off down here again. So from here we may almost be able to see the length and the width of this huge reservoir. Now this is flat land, so when we in the West think of a reservoir, we think of something that was built in a somewhat mountainous area where all we had to do was find a narrow canyon and block it, and the entire watershed behind that would fill up into a reservoir. And without any draft animals other than these relatively modest cows and whatever the other animal is somewhat bigger than that is, everything had to be done pretty much by hand. Even in the shade here, I'm just sweating like a hog, just dripping. One of the boats that plies the route between the exit of the reservoir water and that little island over there that has the small temple on it, apparently. One of the delicacies that the countryside relishes during the monsoon season is the tarantula spider, which, because the land gets flooded, is thereby flooded out of its holes and easily captured and eaten. And according to Scott Coates, all but the claws part are good. Here's a whole hillside full of spider webs. They kind of have this little funnel hole that I'm sure they come racing out of when they detect something alive has been trapped. Here are what look to be some dainty little flowers, if in fact they're not just the remnant of earlier flowers. I can't tell for sure from here. This is my exit point from the beach, where it seems that the trash is literally embedded in layers, but it may be that it's just washed down over time. It's this level of trash in this part of Asia that convinces me I'd never want to go to India, even though Ron says it's not that bad. Yeah, there's the lake there, to give you a distance, and then it falls off sharply. Whether this in fact is a man-made berm for holding the reservoir in, I don't know. But it would make sense that you'd move the dirt that you dug out to the sides and build an even higher wall, particularly if you had some hope that water would continue to accumulate in your reservoir. So I think this fly-infested machine presses sugar cane into the juice. So then they take the juice away in a small plastic bag and drink it with a straw. There's the sugar cane there. And here's some kind of little shellfish type thing. The boats that'll take you over to the ferry if you like, I mean over to the island. They're kind of like, I think they are longtail boats, just not quite the same design. Because one of the games is how high up the coast you can go before you decide to jump. I think he was looking at me and I gave him a little wave to go up, and this, if in fact he saw it, but anyway he's going up, so we'll see what he's able to do. Interesting sunset after a grueling day in the heat, but as the man said, would I rather be sitting in my van in Arizona trying to think of something to do that day? This beats it all.